This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29. This is the...
There's no public there. Okay, members, then formally opening the meeting. Could I just do the usual housekeeping and ask people to switch off all the electronic devices and be again mindful of the protocols around the use of the tablets. Ask members to declare any interest relevant to the agenda today. On being declared, then we move on to apologies. Any apologies to declare?
I want to apologise for not being ready. I've got a bit of trouble.
Okay, something. Okay, members. I think it was skeleton together a little bit late. So. Okay, so moving on then to the draft minutes, item number 2. That's page 5 in your pack. There's just one thing that's been drawn to our attention. It's just in respect of and this is a point 4.2 actually. This is, members, you'll recall that the issue around the section 44 notice in that particular discussion. The minutes, as they're tabled, according to, I mean, obviously the officials here have been working with the Assembly legal team and so on and so forth, and liaison with the Speaker's office. So the minute, as it is actually written, doesn't properly reflect the transaction. So we're suggesting an amendment to the minute, and the minute would be, and this is because the way in which it reads more than anything else. So the proposed amendment would be that the chairperson proposed that the committee ask the Speaker to issue a section 44 notice to obtain access to the draft Campbell Tickhill report, and then we're going to say agreed. The committee agreed, pursuant to section 447 of the Northern Ireland Act 1998, to write to the Speaker requesting to issue a section 44 notice to the Northern Ireland Housing Executive in order to acquire a copy of the draft Campbell Tickhill report. All of it, according to our team here, all of the discussions have been carried out with the legal team. Everything's all cleared, but they think that this version of the minute would actually properly reflect the transaction, and on the basis that we obviously amend this, then the letter will go straight to the Speaker's office, and then the notice then be issued very quickly thereafter. So it's just a technical amendment to keep it within the proper legal terms and so on. So members happy enough with that amendment? Okay, thanks very much. So minutes agreed then as per amended? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on then just to the chairperson's business. Just obviously just this morning we have a small amount of our routine business, trying to keep the session clear to give us a closed session to deal with the inquiry, and also hopefully to look at the forward work programme from a strategic perspective. So I mean, obviously we'll conclude the committee business obviously very quickly. I'm happy enough for that. Under matters arising.
Chair.
Sorry, Craig.
Was there any other issue under Chairman's business you were going to raise?
I'm not.
No. It's just Mr. Dixon, unfortunately, is not with us as yet. But I think you and Mr. Dixon were on Radio Ulster yesterday morning about welfare reform. Mm-hmm. And there were a number of assertions made that were inaccurate.
As and
we've got the transcript from the BBC here. The conversation at the beginning of the programme and the actual, I'll quote just Stephen Nolan, but you've had loads of time to face down, as you put it, the British government decision on this. You haven't got anywhere, and now it is costing £5 million, unquote. Alex Maskey, quote, first of all, I don't agree that we haven't got anywhere. Second of all, I would say that there were some parties from the outset of this. Whenever the British government brought this bill in, there were parties, including the DUP and the UUP, for example, were saying from the outset that this is part of the legislation. You have to impose it. Let's do it, unquote. That's factually incorrect, Chairman.
well, first of all, it's an interview. which you appreciate. You're in quite a number of interviews yourself on the Nolan Show, so there's a lot of back and forth. I mean, for me, that's a generally accurate assessment of what happened. Obviously, your part, I mean, if you had went into, because they were dealing with the devolved matter, as we've been told, and I didn't respond to quite a number of the points that Stuart Dixon made, actually. But from it came here, I mean, obviously, your party and I have made this clear on umpteen interviews that, I mean, your party and other parties voted against that in Westminster, but when it came here, it's on the record, as far as your party is concerned, a matter of parity, so that's fair enough. You're entitled to have that view.
Chairman, I'm not going to open up the debate on welfare reform here. What you said yesterday in the programme is factually incorrect. We did not say you have to impose it, let's do it. In fact, you're quoted in the chair of this committee on a number of occasions as saying that all parties represented on this committee are wanting to try and get a better welfare reform bill. That is accurate. What you said yesterday was totally and utterly inaccurate.
Well, that's fair enough, but I mean, I do stand by my record of and there's members here, Paula and others, who have been on a number of panels with myself, and even when I would have been there as a party representative, I made it very clear, even though sometimes I felt it was stretching what I was saying, but nevertheless I have made it very clear because I felt it was important to try to maximise the consensus around this table, and I think we did that collectively, and I played a very important role in that, and I have no shame in saying that. So I think I've been very positive in reflecting the views of the committee, even though some of those views I wouldn't have agreed with. But I made that very clear at the time. So I don't think it's, you know, I take your point, so you're taking issue with remarks at a Nolan Show interview. And that's fair enough. I mean, I'm happy enough to look at them, but...
Well, Chairman, those are the comments. Those are the actual transcript from the BBC. It is totally inaccurate.
Chairman,
I don't want to open up a whole debate on this now, because I don't...
That's okay, but the members made comments on it. My understanding at the early stages of the debate on around welfare reform, that we were actually informed by the Minister and during debates of it in the Assembly that this was parity, that we were no different from Newcastle, London or any other part. So how were we going to make changes in it? And that, to me, that's quite clearly saying that you can't make change in it, and I think that's what this committee was trying to do. That was the difference. We had a lengthy debates here when the welfare reform was going through, and there was a consensus got after lengthy, but at the beginning of this whole debate, your party and others had said that you can't make any changes because of the connection with parity and other places in Britain.
Chairman, I mean, we could go around the houses on what was said and what wasn't said. The one thing we do know is that we're now paying for the delay in implementing welfare reform, and since this committee did its work on the bill and sent the bill to the executive to get back onto the floor of the Assembly, and that hasn't happened, there's now a real cost to the public purse in Northern Ireland, and that means an impact on services. And I think that at least what we should be doing, so that we do have a clear steer of where we all are now on this, that the committee, and I'd just like to propose that the committee expresses its concerns to the First and Deputy First Minister that the welfare reform bill has not been progressed to the Assembly, and that this is now imposing a cost on the executive and on government departments in Northern Ireland to the tune of £5 million a month. And I think that at least that will give a clear steer of where the committee is now, that we have done our work. The fact that it isn't on the floor of the Assembly is costing, and is costing dearly at a time when we can't afford that, and also sending all of the wrong signals, of course, to the Treasury, that we're so flush with money that we're happy to give them £5 million a month back.
Well, we did, just as we did agree last week, and we have written to the OFMDFM. We have done that.
We've written to them. I think we need to be stronger in that, and formally express through a motion, express our concern that this matter has not been brought to the floor of the Assembly and that it is costing the public purse £5 million a month. I believe that.
Well, in terms of welfare reform, I've taken a particular interest. It's my understanding, had the Minister had his way initially, it would have been through an accelerated passage. That's the first point I'd make. This 5 million figure, and Mr Campbell has quoted a radio programme. I listened to an item on the radio last week that Mark Davenport did. And this 5 million would appear to be a fairly arbitrary figure because the Treasury has yet to work out how much the actual cost is. So, you know, this 5 million figure has been thrown out. Nobody has given me evidence to show that that is the exact figure. And the
It's
item
not
on
the exact figure.
yes,
you're
it
right.
could be less.
No, it's good. It's
Well, it could be like
much
18
more.
million, it could be 18 million, it could be less, it could be 1 million, you know. Let's wait to find out. You know, this kind of throwing out figures, you've admitted it may not be 5 million through the chair, but the point that I'm making is it still has not been worked out. It's as simple as that.
No,
So with Mr Dixon on, we've
hasn't
had
been
you
worked
on,
out,
we've
but
had
it
several
has-
people on saying
one at a
about
time.
this 5 million.
One at a time,
it hasn't been worked out, but it is the figure which they're currently imposing.
Has it been imposed yet?
And have confirmed that. And indeed, it was confirmed in the House of Commons last Wednesday
Well, the
at question time.
the point that I'm making is the item on the radio last week indicated clearly that it hadn't been imposed and could not be imposed until the figure was actually worked out. So to say it's been imposed from January, unless it's done retrospectively, which it may well be, but at this point in time, it hasn't been imposed. That's the information that was coming out accurately, presumably, as a radio programme.
No, Mickey,
That's all I'm saying.
It's not been imposed retrospectively. It's been imposed.
At this point in time.
Information having been given in advance that it will be £5 million from January, and the way in which it will be done is that at the end of the year, the end of this financial year, our block grant will simply be adjusted by the £15 million that we owe up until the end of March.
If it is 5 million, of course.
But in fairness, there isn't going to be agreement around the table on all of that, or maybe even much of it. And again, for the record, I have repeatedly said, including, I believe, on that programme, whatever morning it was I did that programme, I'm not sure all of it was actually formally heard in the broadcast because the news came on, and so the end of my interview, I think, was clipped. But nevertheless, I mean, I have made it clear repeatedly that once we get down to work here, when we took evidence, particularly this committee, because this committee did the work, we took all the evidence, and this committee came out with a very good unanimous report. So now I've always made that very clear, and that was supported by all the parties whenever we knuckled down in this assembly to do that. So we did do that. But we're not going to agree on whether we're going to get fined £5 million or whether it's right that we get £5 million or whether we're at that point or not yet. Because first of all, I don't, personally speaking, I don't know. I'm also very conscious of the implications of the bill, which will impose an awful lot more money on people here. So, you know, it's a debate which I don't think we need to have here this morning, because we're not going to agree on that. I'm just making the point and reminding some of yourself that we did write last week, on the back, I think it might have been your own proposal last week, so we've written now with MDFM about the welfare of them, asking where they are on that. So I'm happy enough that we've done that, and let them come back and tell us where they are on it. So, Gregory, you want to
Yeah, the point's been missed here, Chairman. The legislation what was introduced at the commencement in this committee obviously was tasked to look at it. And the Minister, both with DWP and with Treasury, negotiated some changes. Well, I'm not going into what the changes were. The committee worked with the department, and we've got a series of changes. You said on a number of occasions from the chair of this committee that there appeared to be widespread agreement with all the parties represented on the committee that changes were needed. We'll not go into whether they're sufficient or whether they're not. That was the distinct impression created from you as the chair without any dissent from anyone on the committee. Yesterday, you put an exocet through that because you did not say there was cross-party agreement. You said, including the DUP and the UUP, for example, we're saying from the outset, this is part of the legislation, you have to impose it, let's do it. We did not say that. We voted against it in the House of Commons, and here in the Assembly we negotiated with your consent, because you said all parties are agreeing that we have to get changes in the Welfare Reform Bill. But you didn't say that yesterday on the radio. You went completely contrary on the radio yesterday to what you yourself had said for many months in the course of the work of this committee and the Welfare Reform Bill progressing through the Assembly. That's the point.
You're skipping a number of stages before we got to this committee taking its evidence, with respect. We're skipping a number of stages there because we had the debates in the Assembly. Our party had put a reasoned amendment up, for example, which was rejected by the Assembly. If you get back and check what was said by all the parties, I think you'll see the parties were saying, some parties were saying, including your own, it's parity. We fought against it in Parliament. We lost the vote. But
And if we can get further changes now, we
well, I
should.
think if you check the
Well, that's what we
Hansard-
did say because I said it.
Fair enough. But we also had.
And you were agreeing, Chairman, as Chair of the committee.
Sorry, one at a time, please. So, I mean, again, we're going to have a long, drawn debate about welfare reform, which is obviously isn't going to take us anywhere here this morning. Trevor?
Just to point out, I mean, I didn't hear the radio programme, but I mean, there was a lead up to the programme in terms of what it was about, and it was the basis that Northern Ireland PLC is going to pay £5 million a month. But if you set that in the context of what Gregory's saying, you said, it may have been useful to suggest on the programme that this committee has agreed, in terms of welfare reform and where we're at, that the stalling mechanism now is within OFM, DFM. Now, whether it's FM that's holding it up or DFM, we don't know. But it would have been more interesting in terms of that programme to come out and let the people come out with their clear understanding that the majority of the Assembly has done their work. They have accepted and have come to an agreed position in terms of where they're going to be. But for some reason, either FM or DFM is holding it up. Then it may have been useful to get clarity from them, actually, which one of those ministers is holding it up.
We have asked the OFM, DFM from last week, Trevor.
But what I'm hearing from Gregory in terms of the interview, we're not being clear in terms of how the interview was conducted yesterday. I know Alliance have jumped in the bandwagon and seem to be coming as the champion, the wonder horse, as if they're going to deliver everything. But the fact is that the Assembly has agreed a way forward in terms of welfare reform. The stalling mechanism now is within OFM, DFM. But you didn't obviously clarify that yesterday.
Well, I think I made a number of comments yesterday, but that's not the point. I think we're going to take issue with everybody around every interview, especially on the Nolan show. You'll be spending a lot of time around these committees talking about it. So I'm easy enough to, I mean, I've listened to what Gregory said. I certainly have endeavoured. I have endeavoured, and I'm going to invite members, including your colleague Paula there, who has shared a number of panels with myself, just for accuracy, Trevor. Because I don't want any impression there that I have done anything other than represent the views of this committee in totality, even though sometimes I may not necessarily always have agreed. But I made it very clear from the day one, if I'm on representing this committee, I will do that faithfully. And I've done that, and I think I've done that, and I can stand over that. And I'm simply saying here, people like Paula there beside you has been on a number of panels with myself and can testify to that. And as I should be, I'm not looking for any accolades for that. I'm simply making the point that I've done that. I've done it faithfully.
Yeah, but the problem was it wasn't done yesterday, Chairman. I don't dispute any of that.
Well, first of all, I wasn't on the Nolan show yesterday representing the committee. I was representing.
Well, you as a member of the committee and chairman of the committee and Mr Dixon as a member of the committee were on.
Yeah.
Discussing a topic that this committee is dealing with.
Yeah.
I think it stands on the head of a pin to suggest.
It's not really.
Well,
No, it's not really.
Well, now, the point is, Chairman, I mean, Mr Wilson's made a proposal, and if it needs a seconder, I would second it. I mean, I find it outrageous that there is a broad cross-party consensus, which you alluded to on a number of occasions, which was correct. It was absolutely correct that this committee and the Assembly broadly was working towards trying to reach a consensus on improving welfare reform. But yesterday, you then say on radio that there were some parties who you previously had said were working with everybody else to try and get an improved bill, didn't want to do that. That's what you said. They wanted to go ahead and do it, impose it.
I also rejected.
They didn't do that.
I also rejected the assertion that Stephen Nolan made that we hadn't achieved anything.
You did. I read that out as well, yeah.
I said no, I didn't accept that at all. I said we have achieved some things.
Yeah, but you went on to say, including the DUP and the UUP, for example, we're saying from the outset, this is part of the legislation, you have to impose it. Let's do it. We never said that, nor did any of our actions betray that. Whenever our minister was the man who negotiated some of the changes. That's the point.
As along with myself and many others.
Yes, yeah, but you didn't allude to that in the interview.
Okay, so we've had that discussion.
Just want to make a point, Chair. I've done meetings right across the north, including sitting in panels with party members from your own party and various parties. It's always been made clear that welfare reform is a bad piece of legislation, and all parties have said that from the outset. And I don't think there's any equivocation about that. And to quote the Nolanisation of politics, which you're doing and believing everything, you know, the questions that are asked by Nolan, it's for a purpose. Now, as far as we're concerned, and certainly as far as I'm concerned, it's been made very clear from the outset that welfare reform is a bad piece. You only have to look at the shambles already that is happening in Britain, the money that's been wasted and continues to be wasted. And then we're being preached to about an arbitrary figure, presumably, Sammy said it may even not be that. We're being preached to by junior ministers coming across from Britain and telling us what we get their own house in order first. I'll just make that point. There's been no equivocation about the fact that welfare reform is a bad piece of legislation. All the parties around this table agree to that. It's how you go about improving it or whatever. I think that's what we should be concentrating on, not listening to people coming over and dictating to us, you know, who absolutely know nothing about the subject.
Just say it in the radio.
You know. Well, I haven't been asked to be on the radio.
Well, the chairman was and
Well,
didn't.
yeah, well, then the chairman's quite entitled to say what he said.
Yeah, even though it flies in the face of what you've just said.
No, it
Okay,
doesn't
folks,
fly in the
let's
face.
not have cross
It doesn't
arguments
fly in the
around it.
face of
It's the exact opposite.
Well,
Okay.
yes, I don't agree with
Okay,
you.
sorry, let's not have any more cross arguments on this issue. Paula, you're going.
Thank you, Chair. I just find it all just rather disappointing because we have worked so hard in this committee on the Welfare Reform Bill, and I have sat in panels with yourself and with Mickey and with Fra, and we've come out as a committee nearly saying the one thing and saying that welfare reform as it was not good enough. We didn't want that for Northern Ireland, and we really did. And, you know, from the minute I saw the Welfare Reform Bill and started reading through it, I knew, and my party will tell you very much. In fact, some people walked the other way when they saw me coming because all I did was hammer on about welfare reform and the changes that were required. And I lobbied hard. We have got to the stage now where we are through this committee and through a lot of people who worked in this committee lobbying their own parties, because I know it was difficult to the decisions that we came to. And we worked very, very well together. And it's just a wee bit disappointing. I know I was a little bit hurt at some of the remarks because I know I worked hard in this committee to bring about a few changes, and I know that we can go on and bring those changes through. And, you know, all of the discussions we've had, all the panel debates we've done, we've come out with a very unified voice from this committee from the very beginning.
I appreciate that, and I mean, just the record, I mean, I'm certainly on behalf of our party group, and I certainly, and as chair of the committee, I believe that the committee had a very good report. They do a lot of very good work. We took evidence, we committed ourselves to the wider society out there that we would have all of the voices who wanted to be heard, and we would out in fact solicit some of them. And we had, I think, some very good and challenging evidence sessions. There's been an awful lot of things said over the last couple of years in terms of welfare reform, not least when people like myself and others were being bombarded weeks ago about burying our head in the sand. Well, I could have taken offence to some of those remarks because I believe that people like myself and others have not buried their head in the sand. I believe we worked very constructively. We could have went in from day one and said we're not supporting a bill in any shape, fashion or form. We didn't do that. So, you know, I could take exception to what people were making remarks about on television programme, the radio programme, but I didn't, because there's a cut and thrust out there, and that's what happens. So, and I think, as I say, we take issue at a committee with every interview that we have, well then we'll spend a lot of time discussing the Nolan show, which in my view would be a bit of a waste of our time.
So, Chairman, do we take it that you're withdrawing your remarks in the programme?
I'm not withdrawing any remarks.
You're not? Right, I second then Mr Wilson's proposal.
And your proposal is?
The DSD committee, having worked towards agreement on the way forward with welfare reform, now expresses its concern at the delay in bringing the bill to the floor of the Assembly, which has resulted in £5 million per month fine on the Northern Ireland Executive.
And on the basis I don't accept all of that myself, I'd certainly not be voting for that one. But I still, on the record, I want to see the views of the committee as expressed in the committee evidence and the committee report to the Assembly. I want to see all of those measures adopted and enshrined in any new bill which may come forward. I haven't seen the evidence of that yet, just speaking personally, but then I'm not a member of the Executive, so I can't speak for the Executive or OFM, GFM for that matter. So you put a proposal, so I'll take this in the show of hands first of all. Those in favour of the motion? 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6-4. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
So motion successful.
Motion carried, okay. Moving on, thank you for that now. Moving on to the next item, which is just matters arising. We've already dealt with the letter now, which will go to the Speaker in regard to the Section 44. That will be in the Speaker's office today. And so that should be expedited fairly soon. And as far as I'm aware, through the DALO, the Housing Executive and all that are all fully aware of the vote taken by the committee. Second point here, as you know, we had a discussion around bringing Donald Hoodless and Will Hare to the committee to deal with the single tender action issue and other related matters that we referred to last week. We're suggesting that Donald Hoodless wasn't available on the 6th of February, but is available on the 13th of February. And on the basis that some of the other work that we're involved in, and I think we're waiting on some response around the Camel Tickell report, isn't that right? But
Well,
is there something we're expecting on the 3rd?
Chair, we anticipate that Section 44 notice is issued. There will be a 7-day period in which to provide that, and that the report should be provided by the 3rd of February, which means that should Mr. Hoodless be available, then provide an opportunity to discuss that with him also.
Yeah, so that simply means if we have compliance with the Section 44 notice, then we would have that report by around the 3rd of February, which would give us then up till the following week to have read the report and then to have the discussion then with Donald and Will Hare then. So can we schedule that meeting then for the 13th of February? Members happy enough with that? Okay, thank you. Any updates that we get around Section 44, obviously people will be advised immediately. Moving on then to item number 5, which is proposed subordinate legislation. Members were aware there on item 5 there we have the statutory sick pay maintenance of records revocation regulation on Ireland 2014. That's on page 12 of your pack.
Part there.
And I think if members have read this, then it will be subject to, the rule itself will be subject to negative resolution and will come into operation on April 2014.
Go ahead.
Members happy enough for that? Okay, Mickey.
Chair, just, I think probably further explanation, because it talks about review found that the PTS provides a perverse incentive to employers by providing compensation for sickness absence rather than supporting them to actively manage sickness absence in the workplace. I'm not sure what that actually means. And I think I'd like to, if possible, get an explanation from the department, because it seems that they're suggesting, and the government was suggesting, that employers were using the statutory sick pay system as a way to, I suppose, encourage almost sickness absence. And I'm not sure if that's the case at all. Statutory sick pay was originally brought in a number of years ago, as was statutory maternity pay, to save administrative costs. And I think that needs to be clarified, because otherwise it's a slur on employers
Okay, then we want to ask them, we just
and
want to
indeed
defer.
on employees.
Okay, then so members happy, then we defer this until we get some clarifications from the department around those points. Okay, thank you for that. Item number 6 then, it's statutory rule. This is a housing benefit, local housing allowance and executive determinations amendment. That's on page 18 of your pack. The members agreed to defer consideration of this rule of your member until it received the department's response to the query regarding specific areas which would be targeted for the 4% uprating. That response is on page 20 of your meeting pack. If members are content.
Again, I have a difficulty with this. When you look at the department's response, reading it, that it speaks to the targeted areas, seems to be everywhere but Belfast, and in Belfast has some of the highest rents. It also has some of the highest top-ups and that people have to think. So is there a possibility, whilst it gives you a graph there on the targeted areas, is there any possibility that we could get the department up to try to find out how that will impact on areas of Belfast?
Okay, members happy enough to agree then to invite the department here then to explain that? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, then moving on then to the next item, which is item number 7. This is Charities 2008 Act. Again, this is no vote required, so we're just asked to note this order. It's a commencement order, and that's on page 33 of your pack. One of the things that I have been concerned because I had a deal with a group recently which was looking for charitable status, and obviously we're dealing with the HMRC, and it took quite a bit of time, and I spoke to the local charities commission and they really had no input into that. So I just think there's been a fair bit of long delay on all this. I know there's some legal problems and what have you with the legislation. So could I actually suggest that we actually would ask the Charity Commission to just to update us on this, because it seems a bit confusing. That for our members happy enough then we schedule that. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I'm going to note the commencement order. Fair enough. All right, then moving on to correspondence at page 35. You'll see there on page 38, just to draw attention to one or two items. The Department has advised that the Minister will present a paper to the Executive in February regarding the transfer of DRD owned non-surplus car park to DSD as part of the regeneration of the Mall West site, Armagh. Happy enough to note that. Okay. Again, then the Department has written to advise the committee that the MOD brought forward amendments to legislation falling under various departments here, including the DSD, to provide access to passport of benefits for Armed Forces Independence Payment recipients, AFIP recipients. The members happy enough to note that, Carl? Again, we have another item there, just where you have correspondence to page 46. And this is the Northern Ireland and Caterers Trade Association, NIACTA, and they've written to the committee requesting a review of stakes and prizes here of some of these machines that they operate. They're actually saying, you'll see that they have operated this, they have oversight, or the framework around this hasn't been updated or reviewed in quite a number of years. Stuart?
I was just going to suggest, are we suggesting we invite them to come and talk to the committee about this?
Well, we could do that, or we could certainly ask the department, have they considered this? And I mean, I'm happy to do.
Maybe that's the first thing we should do. We should
Yeah.
maybe forward this to the department, ask them for their
Yeah.
review, and then if there's an issue around that, we could. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Members can tend to, and we ask the department what the response to that would be, and then we'll decide then. Michael?
Chair, was there also something in GB recently about calls to review the nature of some of these machines? And maybe if we could have got our hands on some of that research, it might help us colour our view. Now, to be honest with you, I would be quite supportive of the position of these guys, but I'd just like to make sure that that support is principled and on foundations. But I understand in the UK there's some alarming statistics that maybe prove the contrary.
Okay, well,
Chair, I think that relates to the use of FOB T. It's only reported in the
I'd just like to make sure with all the information.
okay, fair enough. Members happy enough with that. Votes then. Further item in page 60 of the meeting pack, and this is the Equality Coalition has written to the committee. As you can see there, regarding the quality proofing of the strategic housing policy, and they're arguing that the department has not carried out its statutory duties in relation to impact assessments and so on, or screening. So our members happy enough, then we would invite them in to hear what they have to say. And I think we should also ask the department, fairness to the department for their response initially as well. Members happy enough? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, members happy enough then to note the correspondence as per page 35 memo. Nobody else wants to raise anything? Okay, fair enough, thank you very much. For work programme then, the next item, just as there's a revised forward work programme was included in page 75, and obviously that will be amended to reflect the earlier agreement around bringing Donald Houlis and Will Hare here on the 13th of February. I'm happy enough then to note our work programme as it is with this amendment. Thank you. Item number 10, any other business? Anybody to raise anything under LB? If not, then fair enough. Then members, then we want then to move into the closed session.
Assembly, Committee Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 29.